Hello all, welcome back to the Bible. Wait, what? Can't do it. Sorry, sorry. What's your name again? Leonie. I'm still not well, so I'm a bit croaky and a little bit croaky at the moment, and my brain isn't quite working. So I can't even do the what? There we go. What? That's about as good as you're going to get out of me this week. Hey, welcome back to the Bible. Wait, what? It's great to have you, Leonie. It's great to have you. That is your name, isn't it, Leonie?
That is my name.
Don't be embarrassed that I forgot
No,
your name. It was just that I was recording with Jeannie 24 hours ago.
That's all right.
And then I've been unwell since then, or 48 hours ago. So, don't even know how long ago it was I was recording with her. 48 hours ago, I was recording with Jeannie. And we're doing 2 Samuel 21 to 24 this week, and then Hebrews 1 at the end to finish it off on Friday's episode.
Nice and strong.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
It's been a little while, hasn't it? What did we do last time you were here? I recorded with you and Adrian.
It was part of Christmas.
It was Christmas last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I did mine on love.
Love.
I think Adrian did his on hope or something.
That's
or
right.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it together.
That's right. Well, Adrian's coming in next week.
Oh, is he?
He's coming in next Thursday, I think it is, to record.
There you go. We can't help ourselves.
Yeah, he's come back to do his one, and he might be recording on Luke, I think, which might be part of the Christmas season. So
right.
as we head towards Christmas, we're going to be looking at the Gospel of Luke.
Excellent.
Later on, but today we're kind of wrapping up. The story of
for David.
David.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
We're quite almost in real time here because we're in the series of David live as we're recording this.
Yep.
We're just a couple of weeks ahead of ourselves. We're recording it while Leonie's on school holidays.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Good for you?
Yeah, it's very good for me.
What's good about school holidays?
I get time to catch up on things that I can't do during term. Also, we are actually going away. We renovated our caravan, so we're going away to Mount Kosciuszko.
Very nice.
So that will be really nice. School holidays is when you're dealing with children or when you're teaching and you're working with children. It's very draining.
Yeah, emotionally taxing.
Especially what I do because I support.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm dealing with kids who are really struggling. So, so when it comes to school holidays, I crawl there. It's like, now I can sleep.
And then she finds out she's going to be studying.
And then I'm doing this.
Preparing for some pretty challenging passages.
I tend to do that
there's a couple of chapters this week that 21 today and then 24 especially out of the 5 chapters that probably are going to be quite confronting to our listeners as well.
Yeah.
Because they seem to deal with some ethical and some moral questions that will pop up.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see how we go as we work our way through. But you've got a fair few notes in front of you there.
I do.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I wrote a book.
She's written a book.
Yep.
So she's got some great comments and thoughts. So it's great to have you. Let's jump into 2 Samuel 21. So these chapters, as we come to, they kind of fit at the end of David's life. Yeah. All 4 of these chapters, sort of a summary of events either at the end of David's life or summary about his life, that kind of thing. Sort of an addendum at the end of the stories.
Well, they say that there is I've listened to a lot of other podcasts that are around these chapters, and they particularly say that there's 2 poems that it ties up to, like it has a genealogy or like a listing of the mighty men.
Yep.
It's got, a lot in these chapters. But anyway, starting off with 21 is pretty strong stories. I have actually heard a few sermons on.
Oh, you've really gotten into it and stayed. Good on you.
Yeah, chapter 21. So I'll just start off with just reading.
Sure, go for it.
The actual little bit of the verse. During the reign of David, there was a famine for 3 successive years. So David sought the face of the Lord. The Lord said, "It is on the account of Saul and his blood-stained house. It is because he put the Gibeonites to death." Now, I just wanted to go in on that one, being that David tended to do a lot of this. The Lord got David to actually go over a lot of stuff that Saul did and actually reverse.
Try and put it right.
Yeah, put it right. And because I know that you guys have been studying, I've been studying with you, the leadership of David. And this is no different to that in that he actually had to do really horrible things, make really awful decisions to right what Saul's house did.
So what he was trying to do was correct the errors of the way Saul had done things.
Yeah, and obviously David is always very close to God, so he's always constantly consulting God and saying, well, which way do I go? So I put it down that the Lord got David to attention there was something that had been put right yet through the famines, and so he got his attention through the famines, and so David knew something wasn't right. So therefore, and therefore he sought the Lord.
Yep. Okay.
So it's amazing how God just gets his attention through some really strong stuff.
And he does with us too, doesn't he?
He does.
If we've got ears to listen and eyes to see, it's very often in the quote unquote famines of our life, the challenges of our life, that God is allowing those things in order to get our attention.
Yes, very much so.
And it does pose ethical questions, as we'll get into that, as to did Dave get this right? Did God really say it? And there's all kinds of things we can talk about here. But if you come up to a 30,000-foot level and put ourselves in the position of where David was in his time and space, he very much would have seen, as they did, very much would have seen that things like famines and war and all that were linked to acts of disobedience.
Plagues.
Or exactly anything where they had not honoured the covenant that God had called them to do. So that would have very much been linked in with that in their mindset. And so when something goes wrong, it's good that David goes and inquires of the Lord about what that might be and what that looks like. Yeah,
that's right. Which is what we should do.
Which is what we should do.
We should go to God straight away. First up.
Totally.
First up.
First thing we should do. We were talking about that just a couple of nights ago at our development team meeting, how slow we can be to go to God on the little stuff.
Yes.
We often wait until the big desperate stuff, don't we?
Whereas David was constantly in God's.
Yeah, he had this way of going to God regularly and consistently.
So in relation to dealing with the famines, why would God be concerned with the Gibeonites? So the Gibeonites came up in the conversation that David had with God, and he said that things weren't right. So my first thought when I first read this again, I went, why would God be concerned about the Gibeonites, who were deceivers? Because they came there.
Tell us about the Gibeonite story, because our listeners won't necessarily know that. It's in the book of Judges.
What happened was way back when Joshua was taking over the land, when he was getting the promised land.
It's in Joshua, not Judges.
It's all the way in Joshua.
That's right.
That these people, they were hearing, the Gibeonites were hearing about how they were taking over the land, how they were killing people, and everyone was wiped out.
And they were like a local tribe that wasn't too far away.
Yes, but they were very smart.
They were very smart and
deceiving.
Yeah.
So what they did was they got mouldy bread, and they got really worn out clothes and worn out sandals, and they actually went, we're going to go to Joshua and we're going to make it out that we are from distant land, and then get them to do a vow or covenant with us so that we can spare our lives. And so that's what they did. They went there. I always was confused about this story. I never understood why Joshua didn't consult of the Lord.
That was what it specifically said.
Which is very different
the Lord.
to what David would have done.
That's right.
Right? So that's where David is also very different to most leaders. So then what happened was, yes, Joshua did make a vow, covenant with the Gibeonites to say, yes, you can live in the, you'll be fine, we'll protect you, everything could be good, because they come from a distant land. And then they weren't.
They weren't from a distant land.
No.
They were nearby.
Yes, but because they had made that that vow, they had to honour their oath.
Yep. And so in that culture, the honouring of oaths was far more important. To be honest, the level of integrity they had to their oaths was far higher than we have today. It's very easy for us in the 21st century to sit in judgment, and we will. And there are some screwed up things in this story which we have to say these aren't right. I mean, we're going to see in a moment. I'm not convinced that what David did would be regarded as the right form of justice, but in his mind, in his time, with his limited understanding that he had at the time, it was actually the right thing to do. It doesn't make it right now. We'd sit and go, no, there are other ways to do justice other than that.
Yeah.
But in his time, that was the case. So we can sit and go, but in reality, these people understood the power of their yes and the power of their no much more than we do.
It's true.
We don't take it seriously enough, the power of our word.
And words
our
are
word
really
is our
important.
bond and so on. That's right. And they got that. So let's not sit in judgment on everything, but let's respect some of the things they were doing, which were actually more advanced than we are.
Yeah. And same with the Gibeonites, they were pretty smart in what they
That's
did.
right. That was a good military tactic in their mind.
But if you think about it, both sides won. Because in here, the Israelites got the slaves.
Yep, that's right. They actually made them into woodcutters and water carriers.
Exactly. So they had to bow down completely to the Israelites. Yes, they spared their lives, but their lives became the Israelites.
Yeah, they were or
They were
vassals.
a vassal, exactly. So that's where the whole background came from.
So there's this commitment made not to do anything.
Yes,
and
not
then
to harm them.
Meanwhile, later on, Saul
and
decided
almost tried to annihilate them completely.
Yeah.
So
And almost in
genocide,
his
they
zealous,
call
it was Genesis, and it was in his misguided zealousness of trying to honor God. This is the thing about in Saul's earlier life, he went hammer and tong in what he thought was what God wanted to do. And oftentimes got overzealous and annihilated people like the Gibeonites when he shouldn't have.
Yeah, and it was not necessary.
It wasn't necessary, and it was going against the commitment they'd made.
Yes. So, yeah, because even though, people through the scriptures it says not to make these oaths, but they did.
They did, yes.
And it's like with what God does, our decisions, God, like in example, a marriage covenant, right? Some people feel that there is a soul tie for them, or somebody that's
some
their
kind
soul,
of connection.
yeah, their soulmate. But it's actually not. Well, that's just what I believe.
Keep going.
Personally.
Tell me more.
So, in relation to your choices of your partner, sometimes you, in that time of your life, you may actually choose a person who is non-Christian.
I see. Gotcha. Yep.
But God will
Does
still
happen.
honour that marriage covenant, even though it may not be a great choice.
Yeah, I think Paul talks about that.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely
he does.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that's why
right.
I think the same with this Gibeonites is that, yes, it was a poor choice of Joshua, but God still honoured that vow.
And we talk about this time and again on this podcast. God willingly limits his own use of his own power and authority to partner with humans. And he meets humans at any stage, including us sitting here today. He meets us at where we're at with our limited understanding. We have to be fully aware. What we think we know, we don't know everything.
No.
And yet God still works with us, and God was still working with them. He met them at the point where Joshua's heart was, okay, I didn't inquire of the Lord, but I'm going to be true to my word. And God met them at that point and honoured that in them.
And he still honoured that.
And expected them to honour that.
And he honoured it all the way through, even to the point of this point.
That's right.
Okay, so,
yeah, exactly.
So they were actually descendants of the Amorites as well. But as I read I read on the internet, by the way. So
Must be true then.
No, but it just
Lots
makes
of
you
stuff on the internet.
just makes you think.
Yep.
Why would be, because my question was to you, why would God be concerned? So I thought I'd do a bit of background check, and you could maybe add to this.
Yep, go for it.
The scenario is in the internet. They had a bit of a conversation, which was interesting. This person, I don't know who they were, but they made a hypothetical scenario. So it says, if Bob lies and tells Johns that a car crashed into his house, injuring his family, and he doesn't know how he's going to pay the bills for the rest of the year, and so John makes a promise to Bob to help him pay bills for the rest of the year. Later, John finds out Bob is a liar. Is he bound to this promise?
Ooh,
and if
that's
so,
good.
will God punish John if he breaks the vows? This is what I'm saying about how God honours you where you're at. So the counteract to this, the insight, is that they're saying, hang on, this is a completely different scenario.
Right, tell us why.
Because insight, God told them not to make a peace treaty. So this is the story of the Gibeonites.
So they already knew they weren't supposed to make a peace treaty.
So he had
Okay.
already told them.
Yep.
So Josh went beyond that. So God already told them not to make a peace treaties, and they did. If I recall somewhere, the New Testament said you could break a vow or a contract. I'm not sure about this. I didn't quite research this one. If you can't follow through, run out of money. I don't remember anywhere in the Bible that it sort of says that, because like you said, that sort of culture in history was quite firm.
Yeah. There's only references I can think of to breaking vows actually. In the Mosaic covenant, it says if a young woman makes a vow or some kind of commitment, and then her husband or her father finds out about it in 24 hours, he can break that because.
Oh, right. So it isn't actually there.
But within 24 hours, if he doesn't do anything within 24 hours, then that covenant, that vow becomes binding.
I see. That's something different I didn't know about. So
So that's that's obviously the message we can extract from that is that the importance of a commitment or a vow or an oath, it really does hold significant value. So, so much so that in that culture, that patriarchal culture, because ultimately, let's say a woman was making a vow, I'm going to commit X amount of shekels to the Lord or whatever, make some kind of commitment. If she's not married, then she's under her father's protection. Her father's ultimately going to be the one who's going to have to pay for that, honour that abide by that.
Yeah.
And so that's why he gets a chance to go, no, she's just made a rash decision, and I'm not going to commit to that. And she's got the right to do that. But if he doesn't do anything with it, then it's not just on her, it's on him as well, or the husband or whatever.
Yeah.
So it does show this significant importance of making commitments.
And making vows. And God honours that.
And God expects us to honour that. And Jesus talks about it. This is maybe where it's talking about don't make oaths. Jesus says don't swear by heaven or by earth and all that sort of stuff.
That's right.
Jesus' words are famous. He just says, simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. It's in the Sermon on the Mount. So what he's trying to do there is he's trying to take it a step above. We talked about that when we did the Deuteronomy series, how we want to not follow the letter of the law but extract the code, the meaning for us. What Jesus is trying to say there is they have all these rules around making oaths and all this, but human nature wants to try to get out of committing to the oath.
Yep.
Whereas Jesus is actually trying to elevate higher and say, hey, just be a man or a woman of your word. That's what it truly means to be a Christ follower.
Because that's integrity.
It's integrity, yeah. It's just if you're going to say yes to something, just do it. Go through with it. And if you're not, and if we honestly did that, our world would be a better place. Yes. And I think there's space in that to say, hey, you could say, hey, I really wanted to go through with this thing. I made a commitment. My situation has changed and I'm not able to do that. I don't think that's being an oath breaker. I think that's just being honest. Still, it's the integrity thing. It's going, I intended, I thought I'd be able to do it, but I haven't been able to because my situation has changed beyond my control. Then I think you can go to whoever you've made the connection to or the commitment to, and you could say, well, my situation has changed. And I'm honest about that. I don't think Jesus is down on that because he understands circumstances change in life. But I think it is calling for us. All of this is calling us to go to our heart and go, what's really in there when it comes to being integrous, the word you're using, having integrity.
Yeah. Well, I've always described it to my sons that integrity is doing the right thing when no one can see.
That's beautiful explanation of it. Except God.
Except God.
Yeah, and we talked about that with Annalise when in 2 Samuel 11 with the whole story of Bathsheba. God doesn't even show up until the very last line. And it says, but the thing David did displeased the Lord.
Yes.
And so it's that whole thing of he thought he'd gotten away with everything, but God still sees.
Yeah.
And integrity is that. It's my pastor used to say, be a WYSIWYG Christian. WYSIWYG is an anagram for what you see is what you get.
Yes.
And I like that. It's just being genuinely the same at home, in private, with your family, everywhere. As you are everywhere. That's integrity.
Yeah.
Integrity just means to hold together as one.
Yes.
So an integrous person looks the same from every angle.
Yes, it's true.
And we're people of our oath. So I think that, or people of our, being honest and truthful. And that's where Saul went awry in this story.
Is that he didn't hold to
the commitments of his predecessors.
Which is what he said that he would do.
That's right. He said he would do that. And when he became the king,
and then
it was
he
his
sort
commitment.
Of went off, which a lot of kings do that, don't they? They
Power.
start off well.
Yep. Power corrupts.
So just in tying back to that scenario, is this a great story of God's mercy? That's what another one put it this way, and I actually liked the way she said it because she actually liked the story of the Gibeonites and what they did.
Yep.
And this is a great story of God's mercy. The Gibeonites were in rebellion against God and were under his wrath. But because they acknowledged the power of God and feared him like no other people of Canaan did, God decided to let them live. So that's interesting, isn't it?
I like that.
By the providence of God, the Gibeonites became servants working in the worship of God. Israel benefited from the deception, whereas the hypothetical story, someone was conned. So the person that did this hypothetical, one with Bob and, the car crash and all that, this is where it doesn't tie in because God had mercy because these Gibeonites were basically on the chopping block.
Yeah, so these Gibeonites recognised God in their limited understanding.
Yeah.
They perhaps, one would argue now, perhaps they could have gone to Joshua and said, hey, Josh, we know your God. We recognise what your God has done. We're asking for mercy.
That would be an integrity.
And that would be integrity, right? That would have been them doing their best. Yeah. Now, they didn't do that. But,
no, they went the deceptive
But they went
way.
the deceptive. Now, and I would like to think that if they did that, that Joshua had have gone to the Lord would have said, yeah, show compassion. Because he did for Rahab.
He did.
Rahab the prostitute. He saw something in her and he gave, and Joshua was one of those two spies that was there when that happened. So what makes me think that this part of Joshua that probably would have understood if they had have gone and said, hey, could you give us mercy? But they didn't. But they did see God. They understood God. And what you're saying there is they did the best they could with what they had or what they knew. And in the end, they did receive mercy anyway. So God was watching over them. And also God was using them to provide for the Israelites as well as providing for them.
Yeah, so it was like it was predestined.
I think so, yeah. And I think we're getting into that whole realm of philosophy here. Sometimes it's hard, and we do this a lot with First and Second Samuel, with Saul and David's life especially, because they're long character narratives. There's a lot of things that we're left to kind of guess or reason, or assume from the scriptures, because they don't always tell us what's going on inside the person's heart. They describe what the person's done, and then we're left to try to go, okay, well, why would they have done that? Sometimes we know for sure, but very often we don't, and we're left guessing. Yeah, and that's okay. Isn't that human life? To me, that's human life. You know, Ed does something, your husband, he does something, and you can guess as to why he might have motivated to do that, but you don't really know. And so I love the fact that the Bible doesn't always answer those questions. We're left to guess. So in that situation, the Gibeonites were deceptive, yes. But Joshua didn't inquire of the Lord, yes. But I think if he had inquired of the Lord, God would have given him mercy anyway.
Because you can see that just in
that story.
Yeah, in that story. Yeah. That they had the heart for God.
They had a heart for God. Yeah. And God clearly isn't into this whole blanket, punish everybody, wipe out everything. And it's hard because the Joshua, and especially the Joshua narrative, is one of the most difficult ones to reconcile, because
it's very bloodthirsty.
It's blood, and it seems like the scriptures say God said,
annihilate
them all. So we have to wrestle with that, and we have talked about that before. I think even within the text, there are clues that they didn't annihilate everybody, and that there was a lot of assimilation. There were people like the Gibeonites
that actually
became part of the culture.
Yeah, and they were foreigners, and they became part of the culture.
And even all the archaeological evidence they're finding today seems to indicate that there wasn't this widespread absolute annihilation of populations everywhere. There was a lot of integration took place. So there were clearly people who saw something attractive in the culture of the Israelites that they wanted to join.
Which I think you did a sermon on this.
And
it was quite like a revelation for me, is that the reason why God did the whole Israelite thing in the desert and all that sort of stuff was to make them attractive to the other nations around them, to say, well, hang on, I really like the way that they live.
They're different.
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah.
And that was the whole goal.
Yeah.
And so in this with the Gibeonites, they did. They went, I want to be
one of you.
And I don't even care if I'm a slave.
Yeah,
I don't even care if I have to give my whole life over to you. I just want to be under your God. So, you can see why God took mercy on them.
That's right. They were looking for, and see, this is
and
hidden in the text.
And they continue to live that way.
It's hidden with the Gibeonites. It's hidden in the story of Ruth, who's a Moabite.
Yes.
It's there all the way through.
Yes.
We can get very one-eyed, the Israelites came in and just abolished everybody, but that's not the heart of God. God's always been inclusive.
No.
We talked about Uriah, who was the guy that Bathsheba's husband. He was a Hittite. He was a foreigner as well.
Exactly.
So there was
but he was one of the mighty men.
And he's one of the mighty men. That's exactly right. So there was space for God to blow our paradigms with grace. And that's probably what's going to be confronting about this passage. So I'm interested to see where your notes go. Because I'm honest, I'm confronted by what David does in this situation, or what David allows. So, in the story, there's famine. David inquires of the Lord, and it says the Lord said it's because of the injustice that Saul showed to the Gibeonites when he tried to kill them, despite Joshua's oath. So David went to the Gibeonites and said, hey guys, sorry, we want to make amends. We know we've blown it as a nation. What do we want to do?
Yeah.
And the Gibeonites say, well, it's not our right to, what do they say? He says, it's not our right to demand money.
Yep.
Money's not going to solve this. Here's what we want you to do. We want you to take 7 of Saul's sons and kill them, and let them take the punishment that your nation deserves.
But it wasn't just kill them, it was kill them before the Lord.
Kill them before the Lord, that's
so
right.
The whole thing was like a public setting, and it was before God. And it was,
and this is the stuff. This is not that dissimilar to what we see in
like
some of the...
It's like a sacrifice of atonement.
It is. It's like an atonement thing. But, okay, step out of what you know of the Bible. Imagine you're a person who is reading the Bible for the first time in the 21st century, and you see that. That's not what we're describing here. Is 7 sons being impaled on stakes in public as some kind of public atonement.
Yeah,
that's not different to what you see in the courts of Iran, where they hang people from the buildings. Exactly, we look at that and go, "What the?" And so it's just good to acknowledge that, and then go, hey, we have to wrestle with that. There's something inside me that says that can't be right. That these 7 sons, who were they were Saul's sons,
This is where I'm sort of going with it.
This is where you're going with it, yeah. So
interesting.
It is. It's confronting for us because and later on in the scriptures it says a man will not die for his father's sins; he'll die for his own sins. So even later on in the scripture, hundreds of years after this, they've got some understanding that hey, the person who sins deserves to be punished, not necessarily everybody else.
And this is sort of where I'm going.
Okay, take us there.
In relation to the genealogy.
Okay, take us there.
Which, again, the world doesn't understand. That's exactly right. So David, during his reign, had to, like I said, make horrible decisions. But what about the love about the story, even through it's sad, about what happened with his with the concubine of Saul?
Yep.
So basically, in relation to genealogy, it is said that it goes down. Is it 7 times? 7 times down or 10? I can't remember.
You're talking about the punishment?
Yeah, it goes down generation to generation to generation.
6 punishes the sins of the fathers to the third and fourth generation.
Third and fourth generation, that's right.
That's part of how God describes himself, yes.
That's how it describes. So unless you break that, it continues to roll down.
Yep.
So this is what's happening here.
Oh, I see where you're going.
So it's going down to a genealogy. Now, these 7 men were innocent.
Yes.
Right? They didn't do anything. But the thing, what I was amazed that he even found 7 to start with.
Yes, that's right.
So considering that, what would you call
Mephibosheth was sort of the one that he picked. That was Jonathan's son. So that was Saul's
but then
grandson.
I realised that, it was under Jonathan. It's not so much under Saul.
Yes. And he actually specifically says he spared Mephibosheth because of the oath that he'd made to Jonathan.
Again, the other vow.
Once again, he'd made
another vow.
Yeah.
So because of the genealogy, that's why these 7 men were taken, right? But the story that I love about this, and I also feel extremely sad and connected because I have 4 sons.
Yeah.
So I feel very connected to Rizpah, yeah, and her courage. So, but what I love about this story is, and even though it is a sad story, that the courage of Rizpah, how she put her own welfare and safety to bring to the king's attention.
Yes.
So again, God uses someone that you wouldn't expect.
Yep. So this is the mother of some of the sons that have been
killed. Two of the sons.
Yep.
I didn't actually write down the boys'
No, that's
names.
all right, but it does say there.
But
Armoni and Mephibosheth. But it's a different Mephibosheth.
Yeah, it is a bit. That's
this is
so
Uncle
funny.
Mephibosheth to the other Mephibosheth.
Yeah, that's a different one altogether. But the thing is that God used her to not only bring about the attention for her own 2 sons, but for the other 5.
Yes.
And also something that David hadn't finished yet.
He hadn't finished
was not honouring Saul and not honouring Jonathan, because they were still in that foreign land. They weren't coming back to their tribal town, which was Benjamin. So that's where I love what God does. He takes a simple or a humble person who's got compassion, and he gets them to the rulers, or David at the time, to actually realise or wake up. And what she did, because women at that time were very vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely.
So what she did was acknowledged and was seen.
So tell our listeners what she did if they're driving and they're not reading the scripture. Do you know what it said? Tell us what she did.
So what she did was she went out, she laid her sackcloths in, she found out, she beat the birds away from her dead sons' bodies to make sure that they were not taken. She made sure that there was no rain that came on them. So she basically sheltered these 2 bodies until, to get David's attention so that he would honour them and bury them properly and not just leave them to the birds of the air to eat of their flesh
and all that sort of
wild
stuff.
beasts. So you can imagine a woman doing
She's putting
that.
herself on the line out there
and these
in
are
the middle of
wild
the night.
beasts.
And it says,
these are lions.
That's right, exactly. And it says that
beasts.
it's right through the harvest or something.
Yeah, so it was a long time. It wasn't like 2 nights or something. So a harvest can go, 3-4 months?
It says she stayed there the entire harvest season. So this is months, probably a couple of months of time where she's out there protecting these bodies from the elements and risking herself, opening herself up to the risk of live animals. So in the midst of a story that is very hard to fathom, that there's 7 bodies impaled, left out in the wild, we see this beautiful story of deep compassion from this mother. And I love the way you said it. I don't think I've ever thought of that her act was what actually kind of brought the whole situation back to David's attention. Because
that's
it's
what God
almost
does.
like David thinks, okay, I'll hand these people over, these men over to
Done
you.
and dusted.
I've done my part.
Yep,
I've
done it.
done the restitution on behalf of the nation for Saul's sin. Move on with my life. And then he hears that this woman is doing this, and that's what triggers him to go, oh, maybe I haven't finished yet. Maybe I haven't brought this thing full circle yet.
And that's what I love. God is with you in the detail.
That's so good.
So he's with you in the detail because it's important that we get every aspect done.
Yeah.
And so by using Rizpah?
Yeah, Rizpah, yep.
By using Rizpah in this story with her heart and her compassion and her gifting, it's brought about complete restitution, like complete redeem, complete everything.
Yes.
So, and he's really complete. So that's what I just wanted to bring about.
I like that.
So that, I love the fact that God is gracious and uses courageous women to tie up loose ends. Even in tough times and tough decisions, God goes extra mile with us to ensure healing. He sees us. Things that matter so much to us, he values them.
Beautiful.
And he valued her.
I love that. He saw something in her. He's reaching out. He obviously protected her. In a very messed up militaristic society. See, to this day, I still think there could have been a different way for David to do it than to execute 7 sons. But in that culture, in an honor shame culture, that was a very normal practice where they go, okay, that's their understanding. This is how God will bless us and get rid of this famine, is that we have to, the only way we know to fix this situation is to mete out punishment upon the children of the man who did this in the first place. Intuitively now we know that there are other ways. And as you move further into Jesus' teaching, you realize Jesus is he's still about justice, but he's much more about the restorative side of justice rather than the retributive side. And what we're seeing here is retribution.
Yes.
Okay, the punishment needs to be meted out. And I'm sure that isn't God's intention, but God is still once again limiting himself and working with the context of the time. And he's seeing in the heart of Rizpah, he's seeing in the heart of David. I think he's even seeing in the heart of these Gibeonites.
Yes.
We want justice. We've been treated unfairly.
Yeah.
We deserve justice. And the only justice they know in that culture is retribution. Is, well, someone in Saul's family is going to have to pay for this.
Yeah.
Now, later on, hopefully they would have got to the point where they go, well, actually, there are other ways to do this. But this is still the human nature. I remember seeing as a kid, and I don't probably see it as often as we used to, but, if a murderer is found guilty and you see them being led out of the courtroom or whatever the case might be, and you see people saying, with placards saying rotten hell and all that sort of stuff. That's really what these people were doing. They were just meting out, you deserve retributive justice. And God's into that, but God's also into restorative justice. And so I think today we have the benefit of going, it's probably a better way. Like if we were to use a modern analogy, if something goes wrong in our church, and the situation, or maybe something needs to be dealt with because there's some kind of dysfunction, or let's use a famine of some kind, some kind of challenge in the church. I don't think it's right that, okay, Rohan has caused that. Now Rohan's moved on. The next pastor comes along. Let's find 7 of the leaders from the previous church, and we wouldn't kill them, but let's fire them or let's do whatever. Intuitively we'd go, no, that's not really the way to do it.
That's not right.
There might be requirements. But once again, it would only be that they would suffer consequences for their own actions, not on behalf of me. That's how it should work.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, we are communal beings. We are generational beings, which means my sinful actions do have results on other people, on my family, on
consequences.
And this Sunday I'm going to be preaching at Picton, and we're going to be talking about David and Goliath. Sorry, David and Bathsheba, and we're going to be talking about that flow-on effect, those consequences of how our sinful actions do affect others around us. So we're not an island in that way. But once again, if my actions cause someone else to sin, the consequences should be for their own sin, not heaped up.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some ethical questions here, but if we can park them for a minute and put ourselves in that culture and go, okay, David was trying to right this wrong.
Yeah.
Rizpah was trying to bring to David's attention that he hadn't fully righted the wrong.
Yeah.
Then we realize that it actually turns what is a really quite a confronting story. And I was doing some research into this too, and they actually say this particular story is up there with like the top most 5 hotly debated ethical Bible stories in the entire Old Testament. So when people talk about Bible violence and ethics, this is up there at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Because it does seem to confront us at so many levels. So we may not, there's all kinds of, if scholars are arguing about this, who are we to sit here and think we can have all the answers? But I think we can extract some of these lessons you're talking about, integrity to our word, showing kindness and compassion, wanting to point out injustice in the world like Rizpah was doing. They're all things we can incorporate into our world.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
And this was what was brought up in this story,
Yeah.
I felt.
What other notes have you got? You got any other notes on it there?
Not on that Rizpah one.
Okay.
But just on the last part of chapter 21.
Yep.
So,
which is a different story again. It's about the Philistine giants.
So straight away it went from this confronting story straight away, and that's why you said 21 is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Into this next bit, and it was really quick. So it went to the last part of chapter 21 was David's job is never done. He is now going to war with the Philistines.
Yeah, again.
You can see that David is not as mighty as he has always been. So this is where you're seeing the age coming in.
Yeah, he's older at this stage.
In fact, you would actually say he was a bit vulnerable.
Yes, correct.
But I'll just read the verse. 21:15 says, "Once again there was a battle between the Philistines and Israel. David went down with his men to fight against the Philistines, and he became exhausted." So there's not many mention of him saying he's exhausted. And Ishbah ben Nob, is that right? Ishbah ben Nob, one of the descendants of Rapha. Now I'm just going to go on a bit of a tangent with this Rapha guy. Anyway, just bear with me. Said he would kill David, but Abishai, son of Zebra, came to David's rescue, and that's starting to come up, that there's a lot of rescue happening with David. Then David's men swore to him, "Never again will you go out with us to battle, so that the lamp of Israel will not be extinguished." So I think the mighty men, or the men, realised that David was vulnerable.
Yeah, he's getting older.
He could be taken out. But there's another story that flicks out from this one, which is about Rapha.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go down the rabbit hole.
Oh, you went right down the Nephilim rabbit hole, did you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. So I'm like, Rapha? Who is Rapha?
Who was Rapha?
Okay, so
All
Rapha.
right, strap yourselves in, folks.
All right, here we go.
I don't think we've actually really done much with the Nephilim in this podcast. So.
No. So here we go. Nephilims are very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rapha is a Nephilim. Okay, a Nephilim is a giant, in case the listeners didn't know, but they were the Raphaim. Is that what they're called?
Rephaim.
Yeah, Rephaim.
Which is plural of Rapha.
Yeah.
Anytime you see I am on the end of a Hebrew word, it just means it's like putting S on the end of our word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's the plural.
So the significance in this story is that David, this is interesting.
Yep.
You tell me if I'm going the wrong way here. But significance in the story with this fight, and that the fact that a descendant of Rapha was trying to kill him, is that think back when David was a young man and he slayed Goliath.
Yep.
So Goliath is actually
He's a Rephaim.
And he's a descendant of Rapha.
Exactly.
So it's all, to me.
And one of these going to fight it. One of these that's referenced in this story,
yeah,
which is verse 19, it says that Elihanan, one of other David's men from Bethlehem, killed the brother of Goliath.
Yes.
So, this is Goliath's family.
That's what I'm saying.
Extended
so
family here.
it's all there. So I'm wondering if this descendant of Rapha was actually trying to get revenge on David, because David was the first one to take one of those ones out. So anyway, I know that was a rabbit hole.
No.
I thought that might have been a bit of a link.
No, and these guys were these Rephaim were the mighty warriors of the Philistines.
They were.
They were like their chief warriors.
And they were huge.
That's right.
So, and they were also in the land. We know when they first went up to spy out.
Yes, they were. The Nephilim were in the land.
They were in the promised land.
Yep.
All the Nephilims, all the Rephaims, they were all there. So I just thought it might have tied in.
No, it does. You're not going as far down the Nephilim rabbit hole as I thought you were going to go.
Oh,
at least you've got more.
Oh, you want to?
I thought you might
add
have more.
it?
Oh, look. People for 2,000 years have been discussing who these Nephilim are.
Well, there is actually a little bit more.
Okay, keep going.
But I'm not going quite down the but you can add to that one.
We'll have a conversation about it. You see what you've got in your notes.
Also, the name Rapha is a Hebrew word for healing.
Yes, it is Jehovah Rapha, the name of God.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting.
I've not thought about that connection before.
I don't know if it connects though, but anyway, it says
It's a good
Jehovah
study
Rapha
point.
is one of the most beautiful and comprehensive names given to the Lord, meaning the Lord who heals, Exodus 15:26.
Which is the story of the snakes and the snakes coming in and the serpent going up. It says, I am the Lord who heals you. That's where God reveals
because
himself
they were all
with that name.
sick and they were ill, and he goes, I am the Lord that heals you.
That's right.
When God revealed this name to the Israelites after they've crossed the Red Sea.
Yep.
So that was the Red Sea, you know, like you said, like with the serpent and everything like that. So, so I just thought that was very interesting how he has Rapha. Rapha actually means healing.
That's really interesting. So I wonder, I wonder what the connection is there.
Tie that in.
I'd have to do more research on that. I don't, because in one sense, Rapha is a positive thing.
Yeah.
And in another sense,
it's not.
It's not, because it's referring to this group of giants who are antagonistic to God.
On another point, here's another little one. Orpha was her name.
Orpah,
was the mother of Goliath.
Yep.
She also had 3 other giant sons. Man, I felt sorry for her birthing them. But anyway, I was hoping she was a giant too.
Yeah.
All would perish under the hands of David, the whole 4 giants.
Yes.
So it wasn't just Goliath he killed. He also killed the other 3.
Yes, it seems that was the case, in that story. Yeah.
Sorry. So that was just I don't know how you could tie all that together.
Well,
what do you think?
I don't know if I can. The Rapha thing is interesting. I'd have to do more research on the name. I have a feeling that there is a link between the name of Goliath and the word serpent. I think Tim Mackey has talked about this. I don't remember what it is, but there's some way that the letters or something about his name refer to are the same as serpent. Now, given that God reveals himself as Rapha in a context where he's healed the people from serpent bites.
But he also told Moses to make
build a
that
bronze serpent and hold it up, which is why
it was the healing.
That's right, and that's why we still have this symbol of snakes on staffs today for medical profession. It comes from that story. So there's a link there, which I think if you treat it all the way back to the garden, there's no doubt there's a link back to the serpent in the garden. Way back. That whole serpent analogy is linked all the way through the scriptures.
But you know when you get a snake bite or
I haven't had one.
But no, but when you get a venomous bite, they often use the venom itself as the anti-serum.
Yep.
So maybe wondering if this is
there's probably
linked.
Some link in there.
Because we know that, I don't know if the listeners know this, but Nephilims actually came from the intertwining of human beings and demons. Yeah. So that's where the Nephilims came from. So they were quite not good.
They were non-human in that way.
Yeah.
So if what Leonie has said has just freaked out our listeners because you've never heard that before,
I apologise.
We need to go there because it comes up, and we've actually not, I don't think we've ever recorded an episode where it's come up in great depth. So there are different views about this, I should say. There are different views about who these Nephilim and what these Nephilim are. However, the prevailing view at the time of Christ appears to be that exactly what you said, that the Jewish rabbis, not exclusively, but predominantly viewed the Nephilim, and has been the prevailing view throughout much of church history, although not all of church history, that these Nephilim, these giants, these superhuman beings were actually the result of some kind of hybrid demigod relation between a spiritual being and a human woman.
Correct.
That produced this sort of this sort of semi-human. And this isn't just unique to Israelite theology. This is in Greek mythology.
Yeah,
this is Hercules. This is
I know.
what they are, the demigods.
I saw all that because I read that into the mythology.
Yeah, exactly. So that's lots of cultures, even cultures that have no connection to our culture, like South American cultures, still have this built into their legend that there is some kind of human divine hybrid being. So the narrative in the scriptures about the Nephilim, we first see them prior to the flood in the narrative.
Yep.
And it says the Nephilim were on the earth after the sons of God went to the daughters of men. And that's where they get this. They go, this is actually, the sons of God means spiritual beings. So some kind of fallen spiritual beings. Angels who had fallen, have mated with humans, produced these Nephilim. And it says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and afterwards.
Yeah.
So not just in the flood, but once again, there's another whole crop of them appear.
But that was one of the reasons God
one of
brought
the reasons for the flood. Yeah, that gives you some understanding of what the narrative is saying.
Like you said, they were half human.
Yeah, they're half human, and they were, and it was. So the narrative. I'm just going to tell you what scholars say, what theologians have said. The narrative is that all the way back from the Garden of Eden, where God had said that the seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head, that right from that point, the serpent has been on a mission to destroy or kill or warp or twist or poison, all the above, the seed of the woman. And so the story of Esther is about them trying to wipe out Israelites. Yep. The Nephilim is about them trying to get this interbreeding happening, distorting the pure humanity.
Yes.
And that's why it's all in there.
Yes.
And I know it's complicated, listeners. I know it messes with our heads in the 21st century.
Yep.
So I'm not going to comment on what I think about what it could or couldn't be, but I think that I know the scriptures definitely and theologians definitely believe this is what is going on in this story, and that's why to some degree these are subhuman. These are giants. There's another story in the Book of Numbers about another one that's not from Rapha, but another giant who I think is from the Ammonites.
Yes.
Actually, who has a big bed. Yes. Big bed, it says, that is still. Is that in this story?
These guys are from the Amorites.
Okay. So
same
all
clan.
these nations around about this area that are corrupted by these Nephilim. And that's just the context of the story. Do your own research, I'd say. Do what Leonie's done.
Yeah,
do some
a bit
research.
of a dive.
And go there. Look, there are other scholarly views that try to argue that that's not the case, that there's a whole different argument called the Lines of Seth argument, which actually says that these people were actually these weren't subhuman spiritual hybrids. They were actually just human beings who came through a different line of Adam. That's their argument. I don't agree with that argument. I think it's flawed, but I think that's just coming from people trying to reason away
giants.
The whole concept of this could really happen.
Because it would be quite confronting.
It would be. It's completely confronting in our history, and so that's where it's coming from. So do your homework, but there's little doubt in my mind that that's what the scriptures are indicating, that these were subhuman, divine human hybrids of some kind, and therefore they had to be destroyed because they were corrupted and corrupting the seed.
Yeah, and it was funny how David took 4 of them out.
David took 4 of them out. Yep. Yep.
Anyway,
exactly.
sorry to.
That's all right. Well, that's actually just what a scholar says why David chose five stones, because there's one Goliath and he only needed 1 stone.
True.
But it says David had Goliath. There was 5 brothers.
Yeah.
So a lot of scholars say he knew about that. He found out about that somehow. So
he had others to
go.
He
had stone. He was ready to go with each one of them if he had to. He was that confident in his God. He was going to go after every one of them.
It's just amazing how David was such a small man.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't a big man.
No.
Yeah.
Yep.
Someone would have said he was what, five something?
Oh, yeah. Well, or generally speaking, I think most people that height like 5. My height would be tall. 5'8" would be tall.
Yeah.
The average height would be 5'2", 5'3", and they know that because they found archaeological evidence from that period that they can work out how high doors were and things like that.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, so judged by the height of a door, people wouldn't have been ducking through doors all the time, so that's how they work out what the height would have been.
Yeah, so it was amazing.
So probably 6 inches less in height than what we are now as average humans. Yeah.
And yet he was fighting.
And he's up
big
against
giants.
a giant that's over 9 feet tall.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's short.
That's very short. That's like
apparently Goliath was about 9 something.
It says he was over 9 foot tall in the text. Yeah. So anyway, that's the challenging part of this whole story. But in the middle of this, there's 6 toes and all this sort of stuff, six fingers on each toe and so on.
Yes.
But the story is that David and ultimately his men were on this mission to put right the wrongs and get rid of the Nephilim out of the land.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
That's it for that chapter.
Yeah.
All right, great. We'll talk to you in the next chapter, chapter 22 tomorrow. Talk to you then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?